Darkcast Network. Come to the dark side of podcasts. We have cookies.
Cookies? Me love cookies.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen. Hello, I'm Ashley, the host of Fuck That, and today I want to discuss a case that I covered last December on my podcast about the murder of Alex VanDalsen. Myself, along with some other amazing podcasters, have covered Alex's story, and in light of recent events, we wanted to bring this case up again and have an open discussion together. Alex's mother, Jennifer, has been fighting for Alex's justice since February of 2021, but before I get into that, I want to take a second to talk about Alex. Alexander Blake VanDalsen was born on December 20th of 1999, and Alex was a young, compassionate person. Alex was trans, and while this should have absolutely no impact on how Alex's case was handled, I think unfortunately we are all way too familiar with the discrimination, hatred, and violence that the trans community faces every single day. Alex was found in the snow miles away from his home, deceased from what the police stated was a suicide by a self-inflicted gunshot wound. However, Jennifer, and every single one of us that have covered his case and that you're going to hear from today, are certain that Alex was murdered. Alex's body was found in a position that I can only describe as very obviously posed. Alex's legs were neatly crossed over the ankles and his hands were tucked into his pockets. Now this obviously makes me consider, if Alex did in fact shoot himself in the head, how would he have gotten his hands cozied into his pockets afterwards? And if that isn't enough to make you think something isn't right here, let's talk about the body cam footage briefly. We have all personally reviewed the body cam footage, and notes that I specifically have on it clearly demonstrate that even officers on scene thought that Alex was murdered. In footage timestamped 13/21/18, the officer whose body cam footage was being recorded says, "They've placed him here. He was killed somewhere else. That's my guess." The responding officer says his hands are in his pockets. That's weird. At 13/21/50, an officer approaches and asks, "Self-inflicted?" The same officer who's recording on body cam says no. The other officer says, "That's not what I wanted to hear." And then the officer whose body cam was being recorded said, "No, sorry, it's going to be a homicide. It looks like they dumped him here." So how is it that we went from there to the case being closed erroneously as suicide? I think we all have our theories, but of course, they are just that. But I would like you all to consider a large problem that we have in America today. Discrimination and mistreatment by law enforcement agencies towards individuals based on their sexual orientation or gender identity continue to be widespread issues within LGBTQ communities. This kind of bias undermines effective law enforcement by eroding trust, hampering communication, and impeding the ability of officers to adequately protect and serve these communities. Although a variety of state, local, and federal regulations offer some safeguards against specific types of discrimination, the United States as a whole lacks a comprehensive federal law that uniformly bans discrimination on the grounds of actual or perceived sexual orientation and gender identity. We are still seeing so many cases across the country in which transgender people are victims of crime, and law enforcement agencies misgender them both internally and in news reports. And this alienates the victim, the victim's friends, and the victim's family. And I can't help but think that this implicit bias is hampering law enforcement's ability to successfully solve the investigation. How can you do something right if you're going into it with bias. And you know what? This happened in Alex's case. In body cam footage, even after police learn that Alex is a trans male, they still refer to Alex using his dead name, and they misgender him time and time again. And they do it in the police reports. And I just want you to ask yourself, why? What does this mean? This intentional bias, even after somebody dies, this blatant lack of respect. What does it mean, and where does it come from? This month, Jennifer received a response to her request to reopen the investigation into Alex's death, and we are going to discuss those details during our discussion later in the episode. But before the discussion begins, I want to end this introduction with something Jennifer said to me about Alex. While I was putting together my episode for his case last year, I asked Jennifer if she could tell the world about Alex. What would she say? Jennifer said, quote, "Alex was a goofy kid, very friendly. Nobody was a stranger. He even knew all of our delivery people by name. He spoke to them all the time. He was always trying to help someone, and he'd give them the shirt off his back if they needed it, even if they were perfect strangers." Hello, I am Ashley from Fuck That, and you can find my episode on Alex wherever you get your podcasts. It is episode 17.
Hi, I'm CJ with Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ. You can find my episode of Alex on season 8, episode 2.
Hey, I'm Courtney Fenner. I am one half of A Nefarious Nightmare. We covered Alex VanDalsen in season 4, episode 1, titled He Always Sang, Justice for Alex VanDalsen.
Hi, I'm Courtney, one half of the Book of the Dead podcast. We covered Alex's case on chapter 58, A Search for Answers, The Death of Alex VanDalsen, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Rob, the host of the Criminal Activity podcast. We covered Alex's episode on episode 1, which can be found wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you, everyone, for coming together to recover this case. Essentially, we wanted to have a roundtable discussion based on new information that has come out. Essentially, Jennifer has not gotten any help from local law enforcement, so we are hoping to come together to rediscuss the case. And really, our goal in all of this is to raise awareness, get more attention on this case for Jennifer, for Alex, and we're hoping that by doing so, we can get this case reopened and looked at it the way it should have been from the get-go. If you want further information on this case, please go back and listen to each of our episodes. We each covered the case from different perspectives, and it'll give you a really good idea of exactly what happened. Something that was obvious to each and every one of us when we covered the case is that this case was very obvious that this was a homicide, but it was immediately deemed a suicide, case closed, and there wasn't a proper investigation looking into the possibility that this was a homicide. And that is unfortunately something that's common. It is obvious that there is a lot of bias in this case based on the fact that Alex was a transgender male, and this is an area where there is a lot of bias against marginalized communities.
You're right, Ashley. I cover only LGBTQ community crimes, and the marginalized community, the law enforcement, they're not fair to LGBTQ people for the most part. And that's why a lot of LGBTQ people are scared to go to law enforcement if something bad happens to them. But with Alex, I think because he was trans, I believe that there's a huge bias, and they're not looking at this case the way they would had he been a long-haired blonde woman of 23, you know?
It is 2023. We're getting into 2024, and we still have people out there doing hateful shit to those in marginalized communities, such as the LGBTQ plus communities. And it's just, I don't know, it just needs to stop. I mean, I am infuriated. I know everybody here is infuriated, specifically for this case, but in several other cases where no justice is seen, the fact that this is getting treated as if the fly on their shoulder, they're just going to swat it away, it's not going to fly. So I guess essentially what we're all trying to do is do a call to action at the end of this after we do our roundtable. But I really just wanted to mention that because frankly, I am sick and fucking tired of seeing, our gay and lesbian friends, our trans friends being treated the way that they are and thrown away like they're just disposable garbage.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And I think we should explore that. Courtney L, I'm going to have you chime in with what we talked about. But I think one of the things that stuck out to me initially was just the handling of the crime scene. In and of itself, there were multiple officers, I believe between 5 to 6 on scene. They did not cordon off the area with caution tape. In fact, in the body cam footage, you can hear one of the officers who really advocated for the fact that this was clearly a homicide. He stated it explicitly multiple times. That same officer, who I commend highly in this case, said, hey, we need to section this off. There's people walking through, to which another officer says, why does it matter? People have already walked all over it anyway. It doesn't matter. There's footprints all over. So I think it's obvious that it was mishandled. And Courtney, if you could chime in about what you were saying that you heard on the body camera footage too, I think that's a good piece of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have to go back and watch all that body camera footage again because I can't recall off the top of my head which video I explicitly heard it. But the thing that really got me is when they realized that the decedent that they were called about was Alex VanDalsen. It wasn't, okay, this is the missing person we've been looking for. This is the missing young man we've been looking for. It was he, she, whatever it is. And that is almost an exact direct quote. And it's disgusting to me, first of all, that your whole job is to protect and serve your community as a member of law enforcement, and you turn around and so blatantly disrespect a victim with such careless disregard for who they are. You have diminished them in that moment. You diminished Alex to nothing by saying that. And so much of that body camera footage was muted. So it's interesting to me that little bit, that little snide remark that one of the officers had was left in and was not muted. And it's like, why? You muted everything else, but you left that particular statement in, that disgusting statement in. And that shows to me how little you value this young man as a human being. And I will never forget it. That stuck in my brain, and I watched it 3 or 4 times to confirm that that's actually what I was hearing. I will never forget it. The blatant disrespect and the blatant bias.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious too that there was this implicit bias, because even just going beyond the way that they failed to cordon off the crime scene, when they were transporting Alex's body, they did not lock or put any identification to make sure that it wasn't mishandled in any way. And that's directly in their report, and that's how it's supposed to go. How do you know that it's not going to be tampered with? How do you know that nobody is going to do anything prior to the autopsy? So how do we really know how many hands they passed Alex through? How do we know that they followed proper protocol and procedure? We just don't, because they failed to follow protocol the entire way.
And you know what? That just kind of falls along the line of the Indiana law enforcement, actually. And I know that the governor, Eric Holcomb, I believe, is the governor of Indiana. I hope I have that right. He knows that the law enforcement sucks there. And he's been trying to upgrade the law enforcement and make them better. But I don't know how long that will take. I don't know if he's effective at all. This is the second case out of Indiana of LGBTQ that I've covered, and the law enforcement has been horrible there. When I did some research and some statistics of the Indiana law enforcement, they were actually graded, and their grade would have been like 2 points above an F. That's how bad they are. And I went through all the counties, not just Tippecanoe County, where this happened, where Lafayette, Indiana is. They need training. I mean, all law enforcement, they just need to continually be trained, and I don't think they are. And this one is particularly bad.
The things that stood out to me were one officer in the body cam footage pointed to the wound and was like, look, you can see the entrance wound here and the exit wound there. And it was the complete opposite when it got to the medical examiner's office. And you don't have an exit wound that is larger or smaller than an entrance wound. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think on the medical examiner's report, they found gunpowder residue around the exit wound, which wouldn't happen. I don't see how. When they searched the crime scene, they couldn't find bullet casings. They used metal detectors to sweep the area and couldn't find any. So where's the bullet casing?
To kind of piggyback off that, after I recorded our episode, Lisa, my co-host, spoke to my stepdad. He's a firearms expert, 25 years in the military. He was a sniper. He did the whole nine. We asked him basically his thoughts, his opinions, and he said, did they ever find the shell casing? I said, no, they did. As you said, with metal detectors, they couldn't find it. He said that it could not have been suicide because in order for it to have been suicide, there would be a shell casing unless Alex would have died by a gunshot from a revolver. Because there was no shell casing, that means someone, quote unquote, policed their brass. They picked up the shell casing and took it with them. That's the only way, it is the only possible way for there not to be a shell casing. So based on that alone, it can't be suicide because Alex would not have been able to pick up the shell casing. Besides the fact that there was no bullet and it was a through and through wound.
And how was Alex found? We were just discussing.
And his hands were in his pockets when he was found. Exactly.
His hands were in his pocket. He was laying on his back. His legs were crossed at the ankles. How do you put your hands back in your pocket after you shoot yourself? You don't.
Exactly. If you are literally going to unalive yourself, how would you do that and then quickly put your hands back in your pockets? I mean, you're pretty much instantly dead at that point if that were the case. That's just one of many things about this whole case that rubs me the wrong way. I honestly had no idea about the he, she, or it thing until you brought that up to me just now. And CJ, you were telling me prior to it, like when we first started doing this case, when it was just us, you were telling me about how Indiana has a big history with misconduct and mishandling cases. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more on that real fast?
It's been a while since I covered Alex's case and the research I did for that case and the other case I covered in Indiana, so I really don't have anything I can grasp from at the moment, other than I remember the grades. But what I can tell you is that Alex's family had some communication with the Indiana Police Department before this. For example, we were talking about Jen, Alex's mom, had once worked as a corrections officer, so she knew a lot of the law enforcement, and she briefly interned with the Lafayette Police Department. She got to, know some of the people. I don't know how well. Also, Alex's dad, his father was a police officer there in Indiana, and the father's cousin, and both of them, I guess, were shady cops who got in big trouble with law enforcement. So and they were also both very in with the mayor of Lafayette, Indiana at the time. And when I think it was the cousin, it might have been the grandfather, when he lost his job, he was appointed as the Parks and Rec security officer by the mayor who he was good buddies with. And there was something about, the person who found Alex's body was the snowplow driver who worked for the Parks and Rec department. I don't know. That could just be coincidental, if you believe in coincidences. Also, Jen, Alex's mom, had told me that there was a tunnel nearby where he was found, where Alex's body was found. I think she had said that it was well known during good weather, because you have to remember, this happened in February of 2021, and it was very cold and very snowy. Alex had asthma, and he went out in a very light layer of clothes for that type of weather. But apparently in good weather, the kids hung out in the tunnel, and, I guess maybe there was drugs exchanged or something, but there was a tunnel nearby, and I don't know if they ever checked for a bullet there, because it's quite possible Alex was murdered there and dragged to the spot he was placed in and posed. That's kind of my theory on it. Also, Alex's dad is not Father of the Year. He refused to call Alex by Alex and used Alex's dead name and Alex's female pronouns, which Alex didn't use.
Yeah, I think the other thing that really drove home for me that this couldn't have been something that he was planning to do if the police are insisting upon looking at it as a suicide angle, is, again, the clothes he was wearing is not clothes you wear to walk 4 miles in the winter. And the fact that he was a severe enough asthmatic that he relied on his inhaler. From what Jen told me, he stopped sports. He needed his inhaler. And that was the one thing that she had recalled telling the officers when they finally came to take the missing persons report, that he did not have his inhaler with him. And she had gotten some excuse after the fact by, I believe, Lieutenant Payne, saying, oh, well, some people, can deal with their asthma and, something to that effect. I'd have to go back and read the email again. But I know from having asthma myself, my mother has asthma, it is physically painful to be out in cold weather as an asthmatic. There's no way he would have walked 4 miles in the snow in 20-degree weather with the real feel of 4 without, even if he was bundled up appropriately for the weather and had his inhaler, there's no way he would have made that walk. So I personally believe that he left the house to get into a car, probably maybe get into the car with someone that his mom didn't really want him hanging around, because Jen said that's kind of what she thought might have happened, and I agree. And something happened after. He wore such light clothes because he was going to go from the house to the car. That's what I truly believe. I truly, truly believe he got into someone's car, because there's no way he would have walked 4 miles.
So Alex had a couple situations he was dealing with too. We had discussed it briefly in our Twitter group about a cousin or a friend that owed a drug dealer some money, and he set Alex up, and Alex was robbed at gunpoint by this person, correct?
Yes, that Jennifer had told me that whether it was a cousin or a friend, I'm a little fuzzy on that detail, that the friend needed money to pay a dealer for marijuana and had asked Alex to borrow the money. Alex said, no, I'm not giving you the money this time. And then Alex set him up to be robbed at gunpoint. And this was only, I think, a couple of months prior to Alex's death.
Alex didn't set himself up. The cousin or the friend set Alex up. I got you. I'm with you.
Yes, the friend set Alex up to be robbed at gunpoint because Alex would not give the friend or the cousin money to pay off the dealer. So this was only a couple of months prior to Alex's death. So the coincidence there can't be denied either, that he was held at gunpoint for money over drugs, and then a few months later he is dead from a gunshot wound.
Also, the other issue that Alex had been dealing with was his best friend. I'm going to say, I think her name is Cassie. Her wife was very jealous of Alex and Cassie's relationship. Now, the gun that was found under Alex, the pistol that was found under him, is believed to have belonged to Cassie's wife. It was a pink and black 9mm, I believe. Jen, Alex's mom, does not believe that was the murder weapon, though. This person, I'm trying to just kind of grasp at things of who Alex might have went with that night. It could have been, I don't think it was Cassie, because Cassie would have said something for sure. Could have been Cassie's wife. It could have been the cousin or the friend that set him up to be robbed. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if you guys agree with that as possibility or not.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that he was with someone that night, whether it was someone that his mother didn't want him to hang out with, or, maybe it was Cassie's wife and, she had said, I want to talk things out with you kind of thing. And it went south from there. To backtrack a little bit, though, it popped into my brain that Jen was told that they don't test for gunshot residue. They never tested for gunshot residue. They said that they don't do that. It's not TV. And I just want to say that while it's in my head, that narrative is false. They do check for gunshot residue. That is something that is tested for. It would be very difficult to test for, given the snow. But that was one of the many lies that she was told. And I think that's relevant as well if you want to kind of entertain the police cover-up angle.
Well, I was just going to say, throwing that out there, that actual gun that was found under Alex has never been ballistic tested. There's been no testing upon it. And Jen believes that they're still holding on to it. So why do they have it? Why can't they do something with it? Who knows? I don't know.
So just to catch everybody up to where we are at in present day that is listening, Jennifer has been fighting and petitioning to get this case reevaluated, opened, investigated properly, and hopefully closed as a homicide and get justice for Alex. The most recent update is that Jennifer received a response on October 11th of 2023 in regards to her request for a new investigation. And so now Rob is going to read the letter so you can know exactly the reason Jennifer was given.
It's a reply to request for a new investigation, death of Alex VanDalsen. Miss VanDalsen, the Indiana State Police empathizes with the difficult loss of your family member. However, a decision has been reached that the request and circumstance outlined therein do not adequately meet the requirements set forth in IC 354015. As a result of a formal review process, the Indiana State Police Department will not conduct a new investigation in an attempt to determine whether the death of Alex VanDalsen that occurred on February 9, 2021 in Tippecanoe County was the result of a criminal act committed by a third person. And then it goes on to give contact information if they have any additional questions. And that was sent by Major Brian Harper of the Indiana State Police.
What Jen told me about that letter, about the whole Indiana State Police checking into it, they weren't looking in and investigating Alex's case. They were investigating law enforcement just to see if they had done something wrong in the investigation.
So the consensus would have been if they found that law enforcement had did something incorrectly or inappropriate, they would reopen the investigation. But of course, they found nothing, quote unquote, so they're not going to reopen the investigation.
That's how that goes. And that's why we're here today, because this is bullshit. It's all bullshit. That boy was killed. He didn't take his own life. I'm 100% positive in my whole being. I feel 100% positive that boy was murdered.
There's just still not enough awareness on it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive the point home that if you're looking at it from a mom's perspective, we are asking that you all look at this case as if this happened to your own son or daughter. And what would you do? So if it were me, I would be contacting that police officer that wrote that letter. His name is Brian Harper. His phone number is 317-232-7269. We also have State Senator Ron Alting. We have the Indiana House of Representatives. There is that one reporter that y'all were talking about that wanted to cover this case. Wasn't his name Colt Chase? So we would all probably be reaching that person. Ashley had mentioned earlier the Attorney General, and his name is Todd Rokita, the ACLU of Indiana. And then we also want to kind of apply pressure and ask other true crime podcasters, big or small, whoever is listening, even if you want to just even if you're not a podcaster, go to Starbucks and find some random person and be like, hey, you need to go listen to X, Y, and Z about Alex VanDalsen because it needs enough awareness on it. The cops are not taking it seriously. They're basically treating him like a throwaway. But we do want to hear this case covered on way more true crime podcasts. We want to see more media coverage on it as well. We want to start seeing newspaper articles. We want to see it essentially not be shoved in just Indiana. We want to see it outside of Indiana. We want to see it cross the borders and whatnot. What do you guys think?
We want it to go fucking viral.
Yeah, we need his case to go viral because it's about time. Like, she's coming up on 2.5 years. It'll be 3 years in February, where she still has not received any answers. She's not getting any kind of transparency in this. There's obviously, and I'm sorry, I know I'm a little late with my opinion here, but there's a police cover-up going on here, and, you know, that's just not going to fly. You can't get away with whatever you're doing forever. But we need as many people to cooperate with all of us on this and get his name known. Continue saying his name. That's the biggest call to action I can think of.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
Alex VanDalsen.
And Jennifer, if you're listening to this, we love you.
I love you, Jen.
Very much. They still need signatures on the petition. I think they're like 150 away from hitting their goal, but if everyone listening to this takes the time to go and sign the petition, they will surpass that goal, because the more signatures they get, the more likely it is that someone will listen.
Also, Jen is making these really cool tumblers. I'm going to get her to send me some pictures, and I'm going to put them up on my Beyond the Rainbow, wherever I am, social media, and hopefully you guys might too. The money is just going towards more stuff to solve this case and find justice for Alex. Thank you for listening.